Boatworks Today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much.
So welcome back to Shop, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Now, I'm in a little bit of an awkward transition period right now. I'm in the middle of looking for a replacement fuel tank for this boat, and I've got it settled down to a few different options, but I haven't quite settled on anything. I'm still kind of weighing out options and waiting to hear back from a few different places. So in the meantime, what I wanted to do this week is share what I think is arguably the most valuable tool that you can have in your back pocket if you've got a fiberglass project coming up. Now, what is it? Well, it's this little guy. Now, this is 1 1/8 by 21 inch Makita belt sander. Now, there's a few things that are unique with this style of sander, not necessarily specific to this brand, but just to this style. So what's cool about this is the long neck. I mean, this allows you to get into some tight spaces and do some material removal or just some general shaping, whatever it is you need to do. It gives you access to areas that you may not be able to reach with just your hand. And somewhat of a happy coincidence on this is the actual diameter of the head itself. Now, this looks to be roughly about 1 inch. Now, what I quickly found out was that the radius on this is almost identical to a lot of the radiuses that you commonly find on your boat. So for example, where the deck meets up to the side of a cabin, that little radius there, it is just spot on. Another one, lazarettes, where it meets up to the backrest or the combing in the cockpit, perfect. I mean, there's a lot of areas around the boat where just it naturally fits perfectly. And kind of the icing on the cake is this particular unit has variable speed. And this becomes very important when you're trying to do some real detailed or finesse work. You're doing some shaping, you just need to remove a little bit of material, or you need to do some, knock down some fairing to establish a new radius after doing some glass work. That comes in very, very handy. So now, as you're going to see here in a minute, the dust collection on this thing is absolutely amazing, but not in the way that it was originally designed. The way that the engineers put in this little dust port in the back, that thing is pretty much useless, but I'm going to show you a bit of a workaround. So now, as far as the types of projects where something like this would really, really shine, first I want to talk about where it probably wouldn't be the best tool for the job, just because it's going to be a much shorter list. Honestly, it's just one item, and that's if you're going to be working on an area of any size, say like several square feet. It's just it's not the right tool. It's more of like a focus, detail, finesse kind of a job. Now, as far as where it does shine, stress cracks. 100% of the time, this is my go-to for that kind of a project. Now, if you look at the area that I'm working here, I am right up tight to the non-skid. Now, I don't want to damage the non-skid, but I need to prep this area as tight to that line as I can, so that when I come back in and glass this over, I'm going to be assured that the stress cracks are not going to eventually extend off into the non-skid. Now, earlier when I was talking about the dust control, this is how you're supposed to use the dust control. At least this is how it works best in this type of an application. You hold the hose directly behind it. The belt on this thing is always rotating in a constant direction. So it's constantly feeding any of the dust particles in one spot. You just stick the hose right behind it where the sander is shooting it out, and you suck up, maybe not all of it, but you get about probably 90-95% of it. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't another tool out there that can do this. If there is, I'm just not aware of it. How about old bolt or screw holes for hardware that you no longer need? Now, this is in real speed, so I'm getting each of these old areas prepped in maybe 15, maybe 20 seconds, give or take. I'll go ahead, I'll dish these out. I'll get a little bit of filler put in there to fill the actual hole itself. Piece of chop strand matting over top, and that fill will never print back through, ever. How about something larger like an old speaker hole? No problem. I'll be able to come in and I'll put in about an inch and a half wide taper all the way around the old speaker hole. The taper will be full thickness, and we'll come in and apply a backer so that we have something to lay our glass up against. But I'll be able to get this area prepped in less than 2 minutes. Now, remember what I said about having a lot of control to do some real tricky finesse work? I'm just going to leave this one play out. So now, if you are interested in something like this, there's a few considerations to keep in mind. Now, this particular one, this is made by Makita, and they offer two different sizes. This is the larger of the two. So the width on this belt is 1 1/8, and I believe they make a smaller one that I think is around like 3/8 of an inch. Now, between these two, you're going to want to go with the wider belt, just because it offers a lot more control, especially if you're trying to, follow somewhat of a profile, horizontally. The wider the belt, the easier it's going to be to kind of settle into a track and give you a nice, consistent grinding width, I guess, versus if you go with the more narrow one, which is less expensive. I don't think it's considerably less expensive, but if you go with the more narrow belt, it's going to be much more likely to kind of scallop that surface rather than give you a nice, smooth profile. It's going to be more wavy, which, kind of becomes a little bit of an issue down the road when you get to like the fairing part of the process. Now, I will fully admit that for what it is, I mean, it's a small little belt sander. It does seem a little pricey. I've seen this particular unit vary anywhere from like 180, 85, all the way up to like 210, give or take. Now, with that said, for me, I still believe it is 100% worth it. I have had this exact sander. It has never been replaced, but I've had this particular sander for at least 15 years. And it's never even slowed down. It just chews up the glass and spits it out and doesn't even think twice about it. Now, again, sanding fiberglass, that is probably the one material that is going to be the hardest on any tool. And it doesn't care. It chews right through it, no questions asked. Now, with that said, I am not pushing this particular brand at all. I mean, there are, at this point, let me back that one up. So when I first got this, Makita was really about the only brand on the market that offered something like this. Now that has changed quite a bit. There are a lot of other options out there that are going to be, far less expensive. I've not used them. I can't vouch for their reliability or their quality. But if it's going to be, kind of like a one-off tool for a project, maybe it might make sense to look at like a $50 or $60 belt sander as kind of like a one and done disposable kind of a tool. I don't know, that's a decision up to you. Now, with that said, when you're looking at some of these other options that might be available out there, there are some criteria that I would say are, kind of non-negotiable. And the first one's going to be is the width of the belt. Now, as I mentioned, this particular one is 1 1/8 inch. I wouldn't look at anything less narrow than that or less wide than that. It just seems to just work beautifully. And again, my concern with if you get in something that's 1/2 inch, 3/8, something more narrow, it's going to be far less likely to scallop the surface and rather than giving you that nice, consistent profile that you're looking for. Now, the other thing that I would look for that for me would be a non-negotiable is that the tool, whichever brand it may happen to be, has to be variable speed. Now, when I run this, I'm running it at maybe a quarter of its capacity, half tops. I have never run this thing wide open, just because if you're running something that fast, you're going to lose the efficiency of the dust, of the ability to catch the dust. And it's just when it's removing material that fast, it's really easy to kind of get away from you. Whereas if you're running it slow, you've got a lot of finesse, you've got a lot of control that you can do, some real detailed shaping with it, which is why I think it's just one of those tools that, again, if you've got a project coming up where you have any type of shaping to do, this will be your new best friend. And as far as the type grit papers to be using on this, I guess I've always used this as I'm going to say as a rip and tear type of a tool, even though you do a lot of finesse work with it. But even still, when you're just trying to get in there, you just want to get the surface prepped. I go with the most coarse paper that I can find, which generally runs between like 36 grit and even 40 grit. Come time if you need to, you can kind of do some shaping if you're going to be sanding something that's going to be more soft, like a fairing compound. Then if you wanted to step it up to like an 80 or even 120, that would work out quite well. But if you're going to be, prepping for some fiberglass layup where you need to remove some gel coat, just kind of dimple a surface around old screw or bolt holes, if you're still in the shaping process, when you're working directly towards the on the glass, stick with something that's going to be a rip and tear. 36, 40 grit works beautifully, and these belts last a very, very long time. Now, real quick before I button things up here, I just want to make something very, very clear that this is not a paid sponsorship at all. They don't know me. They don't know anything, about what I'm saying here. I've never talked with anybody at Makita, nothing like that. There's no exchange of money or goods for anything. No connection whatsoever. This is strictly based on my experiences of using this tool for many, many years on these types of projects. Now, I do a lot of consulting with the folks over on Patreon. And over the years, there's been quite a few people that have bought this sander on my recommendation to use on their own projects. And when it was all said and done, every single time they came back, I don't know how I ever did what I was doing before I got this thing. It's so much easier and so much faster. So take that for what it's worth. But again, I just want to throw that one out there just so that somebody doesn't come and say, oh, well, this is a paid spot. It's not, nothing like that whatsoever. And on that note, I think this is going to be a good place to end this video because I got to start getting ready for next week already. We had a busy week coming up. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you next week.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.